So thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak with you. My name is Dr. Alejandro Zamora. I am the superintendent of the Wilder School District. Wilder School District, if you haven't been, I invite anybody to give me I have my card, you can email me and I'd happily give you a tour. But we have our 2-building campus, our elementary and a shared middle high school, but we also have a virtual school in our within our district as a traditional school district. And so that's why I get to be here and have this conversation with y'all. We have a fully accredited K-12 online program, WAVE, or the Wilder Academy of Virtual Education. So catch the wave, and I could share a little bit more about that. But my path here to this conversation certainly has been untraditional. I started off in education as a school counselor and a teacher for the inaugural years of an alternative middle school in Caldwell for the Valley View School District. I think this might be a tough crowd, but 7th graders who did not want to be there initially, that were shipped to another building, and I'm trying to teach them arts and crafts, that was a very tough crowd. So I think this might be okay. But I came into education in that setting, in the alternative school setting, where kiddos needed something different. Their traditional setting in the bigger middle schools were just too much. They needed smaller classes, maybe more hands-on, certainly just more attention, right? You get more attention when you're in a classroom of 15 than you are in a classroom of 35 and 40, just period. So that's how I started my career in education. I took a little hiatus and worked for the state, but then I came back to education, and this time I worked for a virtual charter school, where I spent 6 years, and my focus really was supporting the question that Chairman Lent brought up earlier: how do we support families and students? I ran the counseling and social work department and also the student engagement department. My job really was working with families and kiddos on getting them engaged in their academic success. So I took that with me, and during the COVID years, I moved to Wilder. I joined with the Wilder School District, bridging that traditional and online setting during that wonky time. I moved into the elementary, served as their principal, and then when WAVE was created, I was the initial principal for those inaugural few years of our online school. Transitioned to assistant sup, but now I get to be superintendent, which is an awesome opportunity. I'm a Wilder Wildcat. I graduated there, so there's a lot of honor that I have to be in that community. So early on, I used to work with Kelly at Idaho Virtual Academy a long time ago, and when I first started, I remember saying, I'm an alternative school guy, so here's my perspective. Oh, I'm a brick and mortar guy, here's my perspective. But as I was preparing for this, I realized I've been doing online ed for a decade now, so I might be an online school guy as well. So that's kind of the perspective that I'm going to bring to this conversation. So really my goal today is to talk about 2 things. One, just a brief overview of just the Idaho's charter, kind of timeline, kind of that process. Nancy's going to get into some of the funding, so we're kind of breaking it up into pieces. But I think the previous presentation was really powerful for me as I sat here and saw those numbers, but I was able to really reflect on the kiddos that I've worked with. Those are the kiddos I worked with previously when I worked with Kelly and Monty. They're the kiddos that I see in WAVE now. And so I'm going to just share a couple of stories about that. And really, my goal is just to kind of conceptualize some of that data. So just starting off with just that overview, and these are notes. I was in high school when this was created, so I don't know this from firsthand, but in '99 was when Idaho passed its first charter school law. That's typically when districts were chartering the charter school. They were offering the charter, the oversight. So Anzer, Hidden Springs, I believe, were some of the initial. And then there was kind of an issue where districts were not wanting to charter schools. And so that's where the Public Charter School Commission was created in 2004. And in 2013, the commission had an overhaul, and that's when the performance framework was created with the 5-year renewal cycle, really focusing on accountability, I think academics, finances, and operations. And then in 2017, the point system was adopted, emphasizing proficiency and graduation rates. And this is in addition to the state standards and requirements for all public schools. And so Nancy will go into some of the nuances of the finances there, and certainly happy to join and answer questions with her. But I'm too tech savvy that I hit it and it went away. So I just wanted to give that overview to kind of level set where we're at. As I was sitting here and I was having conversations with colleagues about this, they said, why is the traditional school district superintendent talking about this? That part of it, at least the history, and it's maybe because I drew the short straw. But I think the reality is, it's really, for me, in my take, it's not about a virtual school like these charter schools versus traditional districts. It's about a history of Idaho. The history of Idaho where we really engage in parent choice. We have open enrollment, where we engage and embrace innovation. And I think that's what we are doing in Wilder with our online school. And so although this big conversation is about charter schools, I support this idea of innovation. I support this idea of providing opportunities for our kiddos. And so I'm just going to tell you a couple quick stories about some of our kiddos. We had, we saw the stats earlier about some of those other big issues that were coming up. There's a kiddo who has been struggling with quite a bit of mental health concerns, so much so there was a couple hospitalizations during the school year. And I run a traditional school building, so I'm not trying to minimize that, but there are limits to that, right? I have teachers there from when the bell rings to the bell rings at the end of the day, and so that's when access to teachers and sometimes the curriculum is available. So that type of disruption where a kiddo needed to go get that mental health support during their hospitalization was truly available for them through our online setting. So that student was able to stay connected when they had availability under guidance and support of their hospital, but also come back and still have full access to their education. That student, despite those disruptions, was able to stay on track for graduation because she was still able to access her education at the times that she needed to access it. Her teachers were available every single school day, right? I don't make them work 24 hours, 24/7, but they're readily available. If there's a question that came in, they create videos and send it. So when the student's available to watch that, they were able to engage in that way. So I'm just proud that that student's able to be on track to graduate. We have several students who are medically fragile. One student that has to go out of state often for specialists. And so they're able to take their education with them and get that support from their teachers wherever they're at for that while they're getting their specialized treatment. We have another student who has medical issues that just have bad days, like where they just body is unable to kind of function very well. And so instead of missing assignments, they're able to kind of push through and get that support. And another kiddo who has seizures, that once he has one of those major seizures, he's wiped for the day. And so these are the kiddos that come to us, to our online school settings. Not all of them. We certainly have the high achieving kiddos. We have kiddos who are also going to competitive soccer, right? And that's the beauty of this online setting where there's so many opportunities. We have a kiddo who does his schooling at the end of his day and is working on an airplane license, is becoming a pilot. And so there's a really amazing, just a broad spectrum of kiddos that seek out virtual education. When I was kind of preparing for this, one of the teachers told me about a couple students who, she said, quote, freely admitted they dislike school. And honestly, I've been doing this a lot of years, not the first time I heard that. But what's unique about this situation is that they're doing really well. And it's not because, some of us are studious, some of us like that schooling process, but it's because of the unique relationship that they're able to have in a virtual setting. That teacher works very closely with those parents. And so that student is able to create a system that is sometimes one-on-one if you think about that teacher and the student. But really, I was thinking about it, it's 2-on-1 with the one parent or 3-on-1 with that parent. So that quality of support that the kiddo has is very unique than what sometimes is offered and available when I have a classroom of 15 kiddos in my brick and mortar buildings. So these are just a couple students. I can go on for hours. Please come find me if you want to hear more stories. I've been doing this a long time. But I think that the reality is that there are so many different challenges and so many different backgrounds that come to virtual ed. And so we need a different path and different opportunity. I think that's certainly what virtual ed does for that, for those kiddos. So as somebody who runs both an on-campus and online school, I can tell you with confidence, from my experience, online learning is not the best environment for every single student. But for some students, it's everything. And I think that's the thing that we really have to look at. My online school is not a very large school. I will tell people all the time, I don't want the biggest online school in the state. I just want to have the best online school. I want to have the best for my kiddos. And so a few weeks ago, I was having a conversation about online ed and kind of alternative education. And something that really stuck with me in that conversation, somebody said, for decades, we had kind of this traditional school setting. And we realized that traditional school setting didn't fit for everybody. So we created alternative school settings, right? And so I work that's kind of my background. But if we reflect and we look at our conversations, it seems like these virtual schools are the alternative to the alternative, right? This is an opportunity to create something different. And because as some students' needs transcends the brick and mortar walls. Some kids need it. Some kids need the accountability. They want to see their teachers every single day. Great, we have those schools. But those kiddos whose needs transcend those walls, truly, we have some really strong virtual programs out here in the state. So, my job isn't to pick one model of the other. I'm lucky in my district we get to have both. And I just appreciate that Idaho embraces school choice, open enrollment, and school innovation. And I think that's what we're doing with WAVE, and I think that's what other schools are doing with their online program. So with that, I'll certainly be here. I'm not going to take up all the time. We're sharing our time. But I just want to thank you for the few minutes I have. Turn it over to Nancy, and we'll be available for questions.